Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And this is video number 3 in our review and refutation of a new book, 2019, by Mr. Lance Conley, entitled Hope Resurrected. Pardon me. Mr. Conley says he is a former preterist, and he has written this book in the hope and in the aim of dissuading other people from becoming what he calls total heretics, non-Christians, by espousing the full preterist view. And so since he says he was a full preterist, and this is his shall we say, recantation work, in which he supposedly exposes the error and the fallacy of the full preterist view, you would think that he would offer some really strong arguments and evidence. However, as we proceed in our examination of this book, you will find, as we've already seen in the first 2 videos, his evidence is extremely weak. Now, on today's video, which is the second as we look at his chapter on the dating of Revelation, what is so incredibly ironic and tragic about Mr. Conley's view is, remember, while he denies it verbally, in practice, he places tradition, the testimony of the early church writers, the patristics, over the internal evidence of what the Bible says. Let me say that again. In spite of the fact, as I pointed out in one of the earlier videos, that I pointed out he places tradition and the patristic evidence over the internal evidence of the Bible, well, he called me a liar. And he said, which is his favorite term for anyone that disagrees with him, by the way, but he said the Bible is the ultimate authority. But here's what he actually says. I quoted this, actually I read from it in the earlier video, page 25. Tradition plays a very important role in that it gives us a much deeper or fuller, deeper understanding of where exactly our beliefs stem from. Many people like to believe our ideas of truth and doctrine are born from an objective reading of Scripture, and while this idea sounds pleasant, it is not accurate. The things we value theologically, spiritually, and emotionally come to us from one tradition or another. Tradition. So twice he calls on tradition, and in the third statement he says, well, people like to think we get our doctrines from the Bible, from an objective reading of the Bible, but it's not true at all. This right here is really the guiding principle for the entirety of Mr. Conley's book. Now, let me remind you also that when it comes to the dating of the book of Revelation, here's what Mr. Conley says on page 32. Before I get into this topic, I want to bring a disclaimer here and address that while I am not an early date partial preterist, I have been in that camp of thought before and must say that there are some very decent arguments for the Revelation being written in the 60s as far as using Scripture and internal data in the Bible goes. So what does then he then do after admitting that internal evidence presents some very decent arguments for the early date? What does he then do? He ignores all of the internal evidence, the inspired evidence, and gives us page after page after page of quote from uninspired external evidence. This is the gist of Mr. Conley's entire approach. So let's look at some of this internal evidence, which, by the way, Mr. Conley doesn't so much as mention any of this evidence in this chapter. But let's look at some of that internal inspired evidence and see what it has to say about the dating of the book of Revelation. Now, before I proceed, don't forget, I cover everything I'm going to cover now and a whole lot more in my book, Who is This Babylon? This book identifies the city of Babylon in the book of Revelation as first century Old Covenant Jerusalem. Now, folks, let me tell you, if that identification is true, and it is, then virtually everything that Mr. Conley wrote in his 400-plus page book is false. We'll go on. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. Go to my store and order the book, Who is This Babylon? Mention that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. All right. I want to present 5 points from Jesus, from Paul, and from John in Revelation that show us unequivocally, undeniably, and emphatically that Revelation was written prior to the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70 and applied or foretold the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. The testimony from Jesus first. Jesus taught repeatedly that it was Old Covenant Jerusalem that had killed the prophets. Luke chapter 11, 49 and following. Behold, I send to you prophets, wise men and scribes. Some of them you shall crucify and scourge and chase from city to city, that upon you may come all the blood of all the righteous shed upon the earth. In Luke chapter 13, 31 and following, Jesus said, it is not possible that a prophet perish outside Jerusalem. Matthew chapter 23, 28 and following. He said to the scribes and Pharisees and the lawyers, woe unto you, for you are those who say, well, if we would have been alive in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers of them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore you do witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who killed the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Who was it that Jesus identified as killing the prophets, the old covenant prophets? It was Old Covenant Jerusalem, wasn't it? By the way, Stephen agreed with that in Acts 6 and Acts chapter 7. By the way, the whole Bible agrees with that. Point number 2, Jesus identified Jerusalem as the place that would kill him. The Son of Man must go up to Jerusalem, there be betrayed, crucified, raised again the third day. Jesus said that over and over and over again. Matthew 16, 17, 20, 21. In chapter 21, he told the parable of the wicked husbandman. The master of the vineyard sent his servants to those husbandmen. They mistreated them. They killed them. He sent his son, and they killed him. Who was that son that those wicked husbandmen killed? It was Jesus, obviously. And who were those wicked husbandmen who, upon the coming of the Lord, would be destroyed? The Pharisees understood that Jesus spoke of them. So point number 1, Old Covenant Jerusalem killed the prophets. Point number 2, Jerusalem killed Jesus. We do know that, don't we? Point number 3, back to Luke 13, 31 and following, Luke 11, 49 and following. Jesus said, behold, I send to you. To whom? It wasn't to New York. It wasn't Iraq. He said, I send to you, apostles and prophets. Where did the apostles initially work? Where were they centered? Jerusalem. What did Jesus say? It is not possible that a prophet perish outside of Jerusalem. Now, he wasn't meaning that in some woodenly literalistic manner, but he meant that Jerusalem was the source of all the persecution of his servants. So, who did Jesus identify as the city that killed the prophets, that would kill him, and that would kill his apostles and prophets? There is no question whatsoever about it. It was Old Covenant Jerusalem. Again, Matthew chapter 23, behold, I send you wise men and scribes, some of them you shall crucify. All right? Jerusalem was the city that killed the prophets, Jesus, the apostles and prophets of Jesus. Point number 4. In doing so, they filled up the measure of their guilt. Again, Matthew chapter 23, 29 and following. You bear witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who killed the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. I send to you wise men and scribes, and you'll kill them. And Jesus said, not only would they fill up the measure of their sin, judgment was coming in that generation. Verily I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass away until all of these things have come upon it. Pardon me. 5 points. Jerusalem killed the apostles. The prophets. Jesus, Jesus' apostles and prophets, they filled up the measure of their sin. Judgment would fall in that generation. Unequivocal, undeniable. Go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, where Paul wrote these words. You, brethren, became imitators of the churches of God which are in Judea in Christ Jesus. For you also suffered the same things of your own countrymen, just as they did from the Judeans. Watch this. Who killed the Lord and their own prophets. Okay, the Judeans, Jerusalem, killed the prophets. They killed Jesus. And they persecuted us, the apostles and prophets of Jesus. They do not please God. They are contrary to all men, forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles that they may be saved, so as always to fill up the measure of their sin. But wrath has come upon them, pardon me, to the uttermost. Paul, what'd you say? O covenant, Judea and Jerusalem killed the prophets. They killed Jesus. They were persecuting the apostles and prophets of Jesus. They were filling up the measure of their sin. Judgment, and the imagery of the Greek here, is of a humongous boulder standing on the edge of a precipice, tottering, getting ready to fall. Judgment was about to fall. Any question about who Paul was talking about? No, there's not. It is undeniable and it's unequivocal. Point number 3, the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 16 and verse 6, John exults and rejoices at the impending fall of Babylon, whoever that is, because she had slain the prophets. Now here's something you need to know. I document it fully in my book, Who is This Babylon? The word prophetes, appears some 88 times in the New Testament. When it is used without any kind of a contextual qualifier, as in Ephesians 4, as in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, some other few places, when it is used without any kind of a contextual qualifier, it invariably refers to Old Covenant prophets. So, Babylon killed the prophets. Point number 2, in Revelation chapter 11, the great city, which is Babylon, so called in Revelation 16, that great city is, quote, where the Lord was slain. Oh, by the way, it was also metaphorically called Sodom. Pardon me. Do you realize the only city in all the Bible that is spiritually designated as Sodom was Old Covenant Jerusalem? Isaiah 1, Ezekiel 16, Ezekiel 23. Where was Christ slain, folks? He was not slain in Rome. He was not slain in Iraq. He was not slain in New York. He wasn't slain anywhere except Jerusalem. Thus, Babylon killed the prophets. Babylon is where the Lord was slain. Revelation 18, 20 and through 24, rejoice over her, that is Babylon, O you apostles and prophets of Jesus, because in her was found all of the blood shed on the earth. Point number 4, Babylon's cup of sin, which was the shedding of the blood of the martyrs. Revelation 17, she held a cup, golden cup in her hand, full of sin and abomination and of the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Point number 5, judgment was coming very, very soon. That judgment was coming so soon that John, as he saw that vision, was told, do not seal the vision of this book because the time is at hand. Oh, in verse 11, notice what he said. That judgment, that impending judgment on Babylon was so near, so soon, so impending, so imminent, that Jesus said, let the wicked remain wicked. Verse 12, behold, I come quickly. So what do we find? Jesus said it was Jerusalem that killed the prophets, would kill him. They would kill his apostles and prophets, fill up the measure of their sin, be destroyed in that generation. Paul said it was Old Covenant Judea and Jerusalem that had killed the prophets. They had killed Jesus. They were persecuting at that time the apostles and prophets of Jesus. They were filling up the measure of their sin. Judgment was imminent. John said it was Old Covenant Babylon that killed the prophets. It is where the Lord was slain. It was the city that killed the apostles and prophets of Jesus. Her cup of sin was full of the blood of the martyrs, and judgment was about to come. Now, folks, upon what hermeneutical principle do we make Babylon any entity, any city other than Old Covenant Jerusalem? You know what? No other city was capable, or is capable of doing what Revelation described. Do you realize that Rome never killed an Old Covenant prophet? Do you realize that Babylon in Iraq never killed an Old Covenant prophet? I think you're pretty well aware that New York City didn't ever kill an Old Covenant prophet. So when Mr. Conley admits there's some really decent evidence for the early date, folks, it's far, far, far more than, quote, decent. Unless Mr. Conley, or anyone else for that matter, can prove that there was another city different from Old Covenant Jerusalem that killed Old Covenant prophets, that is where the Lord was slain, that killed the apostles and prophets of Jesus, and whose cup of sin was full when John wrote, and whose judgment was imminent when John wrote, not 2,000 years later, unless Mr. Conley can prove that there was some other city that did those things. And, pretty sure he can't prove Jesus was slain and crucified in Jerusalem. Pretty sure he can't prove that Rome ever killed an Old Covenant prophet. And you know what? It was even the Jews who instigated the killing of Paul and Peter at Rome. Rome wasn't interested otherwise. So as you can see, there is virtually overwhelming evidence. We don't have to rely on uninspired external evidence as Mr. Conley does, we do not have to reject the inspired internal testimony as Mr. Conley does. The book of Revelation was written before the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. And as a prediction of that event, it was a prediction of the coming of the Lord at that time, of the great white throne judgment at that time, of the resurrection at that time. And that demands the full preterist paradigm. Hey, look, I've gone a long time this morning. I don't apologize for that. Once again, go to my website, order the book, Who is This Babylon? I discuss all of this evidence and a wealth more evidence to prove Old Covenant Jerusalem was Babylon of Revelation. Thanks for joining me. You have a fantastic weekend. Be safe. I'll see you on Monday.